So you still have a second. Also,
okay.
you can curse on this show. I don't know if that was a concern, but I always forget to mention it.
Okay, cool.
All right, let's see. Okay. Oh, there we go. Awesome. We are live. Woo! Okay.
Woo!
Let me just spotlight myself real quick. Hello, everybody. Thank you for tuning in tonight for our episode of Laughing into the Void. I'm your host, Tom, and hosting with me, as always, is the lovely Rosalind Paris.
Hi!
You can watch all of our episodes on our YouTube channel or listen to us on most podcast platforms. If you want to help support the stream, please consider making a donation of any size at districtcomedy.io or like, share, and subscribe to our channels, as that also helps. But tonight I am so excited. We're going to be hanging out with Erica Switzer. Erica Switzer is a Chicago-born stand-up comedian formerly based in Shanghai, China. With her unique energy and raw, biting wit, she has supported veteran comics Simeon Goodson, Mateen Stewart, Emma Willman, and Atsuko Okatsuka, along with co-founding Shanghai's Blackout and founding Hey Now Comedy, China's premier black comedy crew. Erica became the first Black comedian to perform in Mongolia at the inaugural Silk Road International Comedy Festival in July 2019. After winning Flappers Comedy Club Soup or Bowl in October 2020, she was featured performer and panelist at the New York Underground Comedy Festival. She performed her first virtual headliner, Flappers Presents Erica Switzer, in April 2021. See her virtually at the upcoming Burbank Comedy Festival, Laugh Riot Girl Festival, the 29th LA Comedy Festival, World Series of Comedy, and various live dates in Chicago. You can learn more about her at ericaswitzer.com. Woo! You got quite a lot going on, but give it up for Erica Switzer. And oh my God, again, I'm so excited, and let's just jump into it.
I've just realized, Tom, that I've given you a spec script.
You know what? And I love it. I love all the stuff you've done. And I can't wait to like dig into it a little bit more later. But we do start and end every interview with the same question. So the first question we have for you tonight is, how would you describe your sense of humor to someone who maybe has never seen you perform?
I would say I'm the love child of Samore and Bernie Mac.
Awesome.
There's a lot of Joan Rivers sprinkled into, just some little short, quick hitters, some little short, snappy observations with a lot of sass and a lot of sexy.
That's awesome. Oh my God. Yeah. And do you find that your sense of humor, like the humor you perform, is that very similar to your personal sense of humor and like the jokes that you like?
Most definitely.
Yeah.
I feel like from the time I was little to now, there's whole Bernie Mac routines that I've had memorized and whole Robin Harris routines that I've memorized. Real talk, my dad's cassette tapes. It just like became ingrained into my own sensibilities around what I found funny. And so it does inform a lot of my own humor.
Oh my God, that's so cool. I know that I personally, unfortunately, like would not like myself as a comedian. Like, I feel like I normally like really dark, absurdist stuff, but like my own personal material. It's like, let me talk about relationships, you know? But it's great that you kind of align in that way.
I think you might be the first comedian we've had on here who actually thinks that their style lines up with what they find is funny, which is really interesting. I don't know what that says about comedians.
I have really niche interest. I'm probably one of the few Black women you'll ever find that'll say my favorite band is Nine Inch Nails. Growing up, I had a big crush on Arnold Schwarzenegger. I don't know. I just happen to have very particular interests and focus and hone in on things. And I feel like, think about Trent Reznor, think about Arnold. They have very particular niche interests. They became masters in it. So I guess that's...
Well, it's also helpful too for it to kind of direct your focus in that way too.
Most definitely. And I feel like influence can come from anywhere.
Oh yeah.
And anybody on any given night can crack something that'll make me crack up and make me feel good. And that's what's most important. But yeah, I feel there's a lot of other performers who have different styles that I love. Like you just mentioned Dark Absurdist. I had a Tim and Eric phase.
No. Nice.
Like push my limits, please. Make me uncomfortable. So yeah.
Oh, well, that's awesome. And it kind of leads really well into the next question I have for you, which is not really a question. It's just looking to see if you can tell us a bit about yourself, your background. And you got into this a little bit already anyway, but any like specific experiences you feel had like a huge influence on shaping your comedic voice? You talked about, kind of admiring, Bernie Mac and that style. So anything maybe about like growing up that you feel like had a huge influence, or your experiences as kind of a global citizen?
I think growing up Black in Chicago, you have to come out of the womb roasting as a bit of a defense mechanism, in the name of self-preservation. So that kind of creates this sensibility around that, right? About being able to be quick-witted and to have a snappy retort for somebody. So I actually, like I mentioned about my dad's Bebe's Kids tape, I would play even when he wasn't listening. I was still absorbing that thing. And then next thing I know, I changed schools and was a bit of a tomboy, and kind of ingratiated myself with the boys by just like writing roasts. And I already had notebooks of roast by the time I was in 5th grade. So it's one of those things where I've just been a smart ass my whole life and a good writer. And it's just been like, she's the valedictorian of the class, but she's funny as hell. Right. So that's just it. That's the way I've been my whole life.
Do you ever go back to your notebooks from elementary school and steal your own material?
Being from the hood, Maywood, Illinois specifically, they didn't make it. A lot of them did not make it. And this was from mortar damage in my parents' old house. A lot of them just did not make it. But some of the older notebooks I have from when I was married 7-8 years ago, just jotting down notes I still have. And occasionally I'll look back, be like, all right, you was hitting on something, but we won't use that.
Yeah, I definitely relate to that, especially like with the shows that we do now. It's like there's a recording saved on the internet somewhere forever. So just like every once in a while I'll go back to like the first couple episodes of like the open mic when I still like wrote material because I had the time, and I'm just like, ooh, I'm like glad that I have improved. I have improved a bit, and some of those I'm just like cringe. But yeah, I think there's also something to be said about like a useful skill of like being able to have some distance and then like look at something objectively, like you said, like, oh, there is something here, and like maybe now if I were to look back on some of those jokes, I could have been like, yeah, maybe this can just be fine-tuned in a way that I'm able to do now and wasn't able to do then. Because I also find when I'm initially writing a joke, like I always think this is the best thing I've ever written. It's always true in the present. But yeah, but that's really interesting. So anything about like your experiences as far as like, it sounds like you've traveled all over the world. So anything that, you've been able to garner from those experiences?
I wish I could say I've traveled the world. I've traveled a good chunk of Asia.
Okay.
So the rest of the world was open to me, although I think my focus for the next few years is going to be home. But those experiences got me out of my comfort zone in a major way. Because it's one thing to grow up in an urban area and be used to a certain kind of city life and the pace and get to know the characters in the city and all that. It's something else when you uproot that completely and put that in a new location. And Shanghai, China, of all places, is like the freaking location to do that, you know. So some of my first jokes when I finally started doing open mics, I would talk about how Chicago is like Shanghai Junior, you know, and things like that. And I think there's something to be said for really just getting out of what's familiar and going to explore. And I don't think uh, I don't think there's going to be a lot of people that'll look at this and say, well, you know, I think I'm going to Beijing. I'm going to go ahead and book that sucker tomorrow. I don't, you know, but China's its own unique bag, but experiencing Thailand, Indonesia, Malaysia, Japan, all those beautiful places really changed a lot of my perspective on life.
Oh, wow.
For sure.
What do you think would be like the biggest takeaway? That's a big question. I just asked that spontaneously. Like, what have you learned with the biggest lesson of, you know, I don't know. You don't have to answer that if you don't want to.
I think the biggest lesson is to just take in the energy and remember that we're all human. So even if you can't necessarily speak the language the best, you can still communicate. You can still read energy and absorb that kind of connection with other humans. Honestly, when I went to Indonesia, I went to Bali and I had a great tour guide. And he wound up taking me to temples and stuff. And after a while, even though they get prettier and prettier, once you've seen 12 temples, you've seen just about all of them.
Yeah.
But he took me to this family house. It's like 3 generations under one roof, but there was no roof. It was one of those kind of real cool, interesting open air houses made of lots of clays and little hut areas and stuff like that. And I swear I've never felt more peaceful in my life. I just kind of felt like this wave of calm, this connectedness with everything that was it's so hard for me to really describe it, but it was a certain kind of peace that I definitely was not getting in Shanghai, and then I hadn't felt in a very long time. So that reminded me of how everything is so connected.
That's awesome. Oh my God. Thank you for answering that. That was huge. That was awesome.
It sounds like
God, now I do want to book a trip to Indonesia.
Indeed. I can give you my driver's information. So he'll take you around all up and down the coast of Bali for 8 to 10 hours for about $70 USD. Amazing guy.
Oh,
I
wow.
can give you that hookup.
Oh God. Maybe one day soon then. Especially now things are opening up and people are actually traveling again. It's awesome. Let's see, what do I have here? So as far as like talking about comedy in kind of an international perspective, we've had so many cool opportunities through the growth of online mics, but since you also have the unique experience of having traveled to so many different places and doing comedy there, are there any sort of things that you've noticed as far as like comedy culture, whether it's on the side of the comedians or just like, you know, certain cultures having different feelings about certain types of material?
That is a big question. Let me see if I can unpack that. Certain cultures having certain issues with different types of material. That is very true. Because first of all, when you even come to another country, you got to be down with the customs. You got to know what's good in the hood. Because I'm a Black woman from Chicago. When I talk, I get emotional. I love to point and I talk with my hands. Can't necessarily do that in China. I had complaints from students' parents talking about, well, she uses her hands too much. No, I'm trying to express a point. How can I tell your child, you know, how to write a summary for Roald Dahl's The Witches without using my hands? I don't understand that. But So there was a lot of cultural hurdles that one has to jump through, and especially in China, where our form of stand-up comedy can be offensive to some people, and especially when it comes to roast and self-deprecating humor. Um, they're used to what's called talk show, which is more like Laurel and Hardy. You got the straight man and the crazy guy saying the crazy stuff, but everything's still very above board, very polite. Definitely always more clever than crass. So there's always those kinds of things to be mindful of. And so that, I would have to modify my jokes for different crowds, like quickly. Um, but what that also shows is that every culture's got what they find funny and what
Right.
tickles people's funny bone and amuses them. And it's amazing to be able to connect with so many people through comedy.
Yeah.
And I think with a lot of American comics, you probably would have a hard time with that format that you were describing. Like I know personally, like I get kind of dirty when I perform, and like I've had to do clean shows before, and it was a big struggle for me. So it's just like an entirely different skill set. But one thing I was wondering was, what was the comedy scene like there? Like, was there a big like English comedy scene, or was it more expats? Like, what was that like there?
It's majority in China. It's majority expat,
Okay.
and there's things that are changing, things that are happening that are hopefully going to make it not seem so taboo. Because that's something, freedom of speech is something that's very uniquely American.
Yeah.
And definitely doesn't fly there. There's the 4 T's that we definitely could never say, could absolutely never talk about the government. So automatically that tells you where you're coming from. You're not touching any of that stuff. Now on to the rest. Now, are you going to be dropping F-bombs on a regular? Probably not. Because you don't really want to alienate your audience unless you're giving them a damn good lesson in the word, 27 uses for the word fuck.
I mean,
which I feel like there are a lot of different uses of the word fuck, so it could be very informational.
Exactly. And
you are a language teacher. So.
Exactly. And we would have comics come from all over the world to perform there. And we would have crowds from all over the world. So, people would ask, oh, well, you speak Chinese? I'm like, nah. They have what's called the HSK. It's their certification. And the highest level's a 6. I speak an HSK 0.5.
Oh.
Okay.
All right. I can tell a taxi driver how to get me where I need to go. And I can order my favorite fish soup. That's about all I can do. But so then there it is. How do you make a crowd of people of mixed cultures and backgrounds and ethnicities and laugh? How do you make them laugh? So it's a matter of simplifying your language, getting your act outs right and making it accessible and being relatable. That's it. And so the core group of us comics there, we're constantly working on those fundamentals. So when it comes down to writing and stuff, we probably get, a lot of American cities comics beat on that with the attention and detail to writing the jokes. When it comes to performing, maybe not so much.
Well, it's interesting too, because like I would think, kind of performing for a diverse audience, my go-to, especially if there's a language barrier, would be to like make my physicality a lot bigger or just try to act with my body more. But then also if your students' parents are telling you, don't talk with your hands so much, like it seems like you were walking such a fine line to be kind of figuring that out.
Which is why I absolutely loved it when I transferred to the French school.
Yeah.
So we didn't have those problems and we could be as big and dramatic and bold as we needed to be, especially trying to get a whole bunch of 10th graders to pass the IGCSEs. And I was the drama teacher for the last year. Oh, we're going in. Oh, Macbeth. We are really doing it.
That's
all
awesome.
of those expressions that you've been holding in for years. It's like time to let them all out at once.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, indeed.
But the freedom of speech thing is also a very interesting point too, just because I have a little anecdote where I was friends with someone who owned a venue in China. And it was like hearing him talk about the open mic that he runs. And like, it baffles me. I don't know if this was your experience, but he had to like have people fill out forms prior to the shows to outline what they were going to talk about in their set. So I imagine at least, less riffing going on in that situation. But did you find yourself needing to like fill out those same forms and stuff for your performances?
I've given whole scripts.
Oh wow.
Wow.
I've given whole scripts, and there's that. With Blackout comedy and with Hey Now comedy, we did have that freedom, but we also were not about to cross the line unnecessarily because we never wanted to ride that. We never wanted to bet on who's in the audience or not. I hold that thought for a moment because my battery is not about to die in the middle of this interview.
Yay! Yeah, take your time. But yeah, no, it does also make me appreciate, the freedom of speech we have in America here today. Feel like I need to like find a way to insert like a bald eagle flying behind me. This is like make that happen.
Real talk, because if there's anything I could ever thank China for, it is making me a better American.
Oh, nice.
Okay.
But yeah, no, thank you for sharing that with us, though. It's always interesting, especially to see how they do it in other countries, and also again, like it's been again such a cool experience on Zoom. I think that we've had like at least for the TPNJ open mic, people coming in from Russia, Spain, Malaysia. That like one day I need to like go out and visit these places and then like do the physical shows there and have like my dream would be to have like the district comedy map line up with like maps of areas I've actually done comedy in real life sort of thing. That's a goal. But that being said, I want to get in a little bit to more of the virtual scene because you've also hosted a good bit of shows through Rampantly, and I'm curious, how's that experience been? And is that something where you find that you prefer one role over the other, performer versus hosting?
Well, I only did the Rampantly thing for a short period. I left in February. But that experience was an experience, to say the least. And having gone from producing in-person shows to now hosting with kind of an intermediary that's like co-producer, it was not the best thing for me. And I'm a pretty tech savvy person, but when it comes to where my brain is when there's performing and there's production and hosting and all that stuff going on, I got to be boots on the ground with it. My energy's got to be all in one place, concentrated, from my own experience of running shows. So will I produce shows in the future virtually? Maybe. I'm never going to say never. And we never know what the future could bring, as we've all.
I'm also like, you heard it here first, people. She's going to be producing. No.
I very well could. I mean, I don't mind it. And I do appreciate being able to network and meet so many cool people from all corners of the globe, as you mentioned, Tom. And it would be nice to get together with some of those best of comedy buddies and do some stuff occasionally online. Yeah.
Oh yeah, that's something too. Just like the best of Zoom comics as like a whole global thing would be awesome. But yeah, I think also too, just like as things are opening up, I'm just like, the thing I'm gonna miss the most is just like no commute. That's my favorite thing. Which is, yeah. For the tech things that are maybe like a little bit harder to get around with programs like Zoom, since you have experience hosting live shows, do you find one is simpler?
Live shows.
Live shows. Okay, well, there you
Simpler.
go. Yeah.
Even with running all around backstage if you got to do it, or trying to hype somebody up and give them that pep talk right before they go on. That's why I say my energy's got to be right there. I need to be in somebody's face.
It's interesting that you say that, because now I just have this image of like a sad comic and you being like, you have to go on now. Like,
oh, that's
pull yourself
okay.
together.
I would turn into comedy Oprah real quick. You know, I remind them that, you know, what's your why? You know, I get in there and give them that encouragement so they can get out there and do it. And then if not, then the Bernie Mac comes up.
That's awesome.
It's always waiting there in the wings.
Exactly. Boy, if you don't get your ass up in there,
these people paid money to see you.
Right.
Yeah, awesome. Okay. But that being said, it sounds like maybe one doesn't necessarily come before the other when it comes to your preference.
For me, the whole world's a stage. All the world's a stage. Whoever needs my services, I'm ready to render them.
There you go.
You know, so I'm here for the chuckles, and I'm here to bring people some joy. So here's hoping, knock, knock. It's mostly in a live setting.
Yeah.
But again, you're at home watching this streaming. You see us. We deliver them chuckles, them laughs.
Oh my God. And speaking of which too, because you kind of touched like a bit on this earlier, but I didn't know about the teaching of theater from you. And you mentioned also the voice acting. So do you find that, you know, there's a ton of overlap with those performance skills? Do you find that maybe they don't have as much in common as possible, or like maybe how one has influenced your comedy or vice versa?
For me, it's all one.
Mm.
I had been just kind of floundering in a corporate job. I mean, I'd gone to school for English, and I was teaching my last couple of years of grad school, and then stock market, housing, you know, all that recession and stuff happened in '08. And then I wound up being out of work for a year and then trying to manage it through corporate. So I had been separated from teaching for a long time, and I hated that. And I hated that corporate rat race and being on that hamster wheel and feeling like there's no joy. Where's my creativity? Where's my spark? You know, I feel like that's waning every day as I'm tacking on more 12-hour days. So when I had the opportunity to kind of press the reset button on life and go teach, I said, that's it. I'm going all for it. So when I went to China, I dove in head first to teaching and public speaking to kind of regain my sense of getting out there and being in front of people and doing the thing. And then I jumped into comedy. Comedy kind of came along with that good ass French school job at the same time. And so that was it. That was my whole life.
Oh my God, that's awesome. We got to talk more about that as far as just like hitting the reset button. How do you even begin to like set yourself up to do that? Or I guess that's probably a big part of it, is like you kind of just have to commit to the change and like figure it out as you go.
Gotta have that follow through. It's one of those situations really where you have to shit or get off the pot. You have to decide, you know, that you've had enough of a certain kind of circumstance, and the thing that's holding you back from living the kind of life you want to live is you. And then after you do all that hard work and build up that courage and that confidence to take that risk and fall forward into that fear, that's it. So I've just plunged headfirst into it. And I said, you know, this is the thing I would be doing if I could not fail. If there was no obstacles, no barriers, and I gave it my whole energy, this is the thing I would be doing. and it's paying off, and I'm really grateful.
That's awesome. And I feel like also that is you articulated that awesomely, and it actually reminds me about how much overlap there is between like some of the things that we learn in comedy and these more philosophical things that you're kind of talking about. Philosophical is maybe not the right word, but like just that's the whole phrase, I think, at least in improv, me and Roz come from an improv background, is like one of the things is like follow the fear. And I think that, you know, tacking onto that, the whole like not being afraid of failure is just like, again, so many things in like that come up in studying comedy and in performance that overlap with just like life lessons, you know? That's why I'm a big also advocate for like, let's have more arts in the schools and let's just make people take comedy classes.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Definitely. Before I left for China, I read The Art of War and The War of Art.
Oh, wow.
Both
I
of
didn't
them.
even know this art existed.
Right? It was like I'm doing my homework on every level.
Yeah.
And Stephen Pressfield's The War of Art is probably one of the best books that I read to really kick my own ass, especially creatively, and to just to fall into the creativity. It's the thing that I have been missing and longing for and never found an adequate replacement. I mean, I was a gym nerd, gym nut for most of my adult life, but that was only fulfilling me so much.
Mm-hmm.
When my hand had a pen and a notebook, then that's when everything started making sense. That's when everything was right in my world.
Yeah. And I feel like that's part of it too, is maybe like, while for me, it's like comedy and performing, like for somebody else, it'll be something else that like makes it click for them. But I also really relate to that struggle you talked about as far as like being trapped in a cycle, maybe from the corporate world, maybe from something else. And then like, how do you like make that space for yourself to do those creative things that really are just as important as far as like the work that fulfills your creative needs versus the work that fills your financial needs. But yeah, I don't know. Roz, what do you think about that?
Always wish there needs to be somebody who like takes like kids fresh out of school who are like creative people aside and be like, you don't have to give up your dreams as an adult, you know. like I was like, I'm either gonna, you know, because when I was fresh out of college, I was like, I'm either going to be a professional comedian or I'm going to completely give it up and just work some boring job that pays the bills. And like, I wish I had figured out sooner that you don't have to make that choice, like that you can pay your bills but also still tap into your creative side. I just like, for me, that was the biggest and most important revelation I made like in my early 20s, was like, oh, okay, well, if I arrange things my way, then I don't have to give everything up, you know?
Yeah. And it's still definitely hard though. Yeah, like whether you're trying to commit to it 100% or, you know, going through the balancing act, it's like, it's all still work. And I also find that they are incredible performers and obviously including comedians who are fantastic, and, you know, their work is good, whether they are, you know, hitting it 100%, it's their full-time job, and also if they are still doing the 9 to 5, because it's also just a precarious industry in general, like the arts. Like so much of it is set up in this model of like basically being a freelancer or an independent contractor, where it's like, I am in this weird place where I am my own boss, but also kind of maybe can't control my rates for certain projects the way I would like. Yeah, it's a whole thing. Have you observed anything that like works for you as far as like marketing yourself as a professional and like kind of making your own work?
I am still figuring it all out, just like everybody else. Marketing for me has kind of at times felt like a third or fourth job. And I know it's super important, but it was one of those things where it's like, I'm over here in Shanghai. So somebody in France or somebody in the Netherlands and somebody in Zimbabwe knows I'm a badass comedian. But what about the people here at home?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so that's another reason why there was so much of the virtual grinding when, we were still mostly virtual. It's because I had to figure out a way to get people to know me. I could be on TikTok and Instagram until the cows come home. But if I don't sit here and deliver these jokes and make people feel this laughter, ain't nobody gonna know who Erica Switzer is. So I really had to dig in and just do that work and try to make a name for myself as best as possible.
Which it seems like you really have. Just looking at like, you're probably the person that I've like actually met as far as like people I follow on Instagram that has like so many people following you. So if do you have any advice for like increasing number of like followers on Instagram? Although that sounds like kind of a shallow question, it's really so important, and I'm curious how like you are able to have like such a following, other than obviously being the awesome, amazing person you are. Or maybe that's the secret that I'm missing, is that just be awesome and people will
Just be
gravitate
someone
towards
else.
you.
It's a mixture of both of those things. Because there's a lot of friends and family and colleagues that are there. A lot of people that I've shaken hands with and taken pictures with in Shanghai and in Mongolia and different cities in China and different cities here now. Um, but I'm also, because I pushed so hard to network with people that I was performing with, it was also making me laugh,
Mhm.
or comics that I was watching when here at home while I was over there on the other side of the world that I enjoyed. So now it's a good chunk of people that I follow are fellow comedians.
Yeah.
And so it feels nice to be able to say, oh, I got this gig because so and so and I were on a show together and they recommended me. Or they were putting on their own show and they said, hey, Erica, come jump on this. So that's where I'm at now. And we start seeing 5 and 10,000. Then it'll be like, oh, she's got Chicago. We're calling it for Switzer.
Yeah. Oh my God. That's awesome. And yeah, it's almost like another balancing act too, as far as like, getting that exposure and getting that audience, but also at the same time, it seems like you're curating it. Like I'm not just following anybody, like you said, they have to make you laugh too. So props to you on your success with that. Again, like I look at your like Instagram and I'm just like, oh my God, maybe one day I'll have that many people following me. I'd love to get myself out there, but thanks for going into that. I now gonna shift gears a little bit, kind of talk about, the comedy craft. So what are kind of the first steps that you take as you begin to work on a new set for your act, or any kind of writing tips?
Right now, I'm kind of rewriting my life in some ways. I had not lived in Chicago in over 10 years because I've been married and living in Colorado for 5 years out there in Colorado Springs, and then in China for 4 years. So coming back home, I'm piecing together a lot of things. I'm going back to places I used to hang at, hearing songs I used to love, feeling those memories, and starting to really write organically from that, instead of just hitting folks with a barrage of dating jokes from dating disasters abroad. Um, so now that the process just, it's whatever hits me. If I'm, I hate using this word, but if I'm triggered by something and I just got to write it out, or I have this memory of something my mama used to say, or some old song my daddy used to put on. And the reason why I knew something was up every time he played that song. That these are the kind of things I'm getting in and digging deep for.
Awesome. So is there any like piece of advice that you have found particularly helpful for somebody watching this who maybe is a newer comic and trying to work on their stuff?
When I started doing stand up, because stand up was one of those things where I put off for so long and came up with every excuse. And when I finally started doing it, I did it once a month. And the co-owner of the bar, of the comedy club I was doing it at, said, "You're really funny. Why don't you do this more often?" And I said, "Crippling anxiety." So, we talked some more, and then he was very encouraging. And then I started just grinding out. And I would write, I'd perform, they get it. Woohoo. All right, cool. We'll go back, tighten that up, add a new thing, go perform. Woohoo. Yeah, okay, cool. And after one particularly good set, another comedian buddy of mine was out at the bar. He said, "You had a really good set. You recorded it, right?" I was like, "Yeah, of course I did." He's like, "Great. Now you're going to go listen to it like it's your new favorite song." And that was it for me. That was the thing to get over. And I recommend it for anybody who's like, "I hate my voice. I hate how I sound." But you really want to know, are you funny? You really want to go ahead and pick apart. Did you get a big laugh or a little laugh? Did that joke land the way you thought it was going to land? Did they laugh more at the premise and setup or at your actual punch? Like, that's the thing where you can really find out where you're at. I would, as soon as I was off and as soon as I was leaving, I go play my set in the taxi on the way back home and start evaluating. And not just to be like, "Well, I got 3 applause breaks. Okay, I got about 20, 24 laughs right there. Okay, good. So that's not bad. That's not bad." But really, for me, I'm an auditory learner, so I loved hearing my beats, hearing my rhythms, and that enabled me to memorize my sets more, especially when they were really hitting, and keep crafting from there. So record yourself. That is number one. Whether it's audio or video, record yourself and listen and pay attention.
That's a great piece of advice. I
Yeah.
actually just did my first time since lockdown, and even longer because I also only got back into doing stand-up mid-lockdown. But I did my first live show last weekend, and I had my fiance record it while I was doing it, and it is kind of like that cringy feeling, but you also just like have to kind of push yourself to get over it. And like I'm gonna ignore how like dumb and stupid I think that like my voice is or how I look or whatever, and just kind of like look at it as far as like, how is the comedy though? And like even with that, it's I gave myself a lot of leeway trying to be nice because I was like, you haven't performed live in over a year, and kind of give myself that space. But it's also just helpful to be like, man, Tom, we gotta remember now, exercise these old muscles of just straighten your back when you're on stage and stop slouching. I know you sit in front of a computer for like 80% of your life now, but when you're on stage, like it makes such a huge difference. I thought I was like 3 inches shorter, and like, I'll definitely have that in mind. Like next time, just like up there. But like everything you said too, as far as like being able to listen to it over and over again, yeah, great piece of advice. And actually reminds me of because I know you've worked with Ralph Anthony before. He does that too, and it is like the way he describes it. Maybe people don't need to be as intense as he is with it, but he will like fine tune a joke so much from his recordings, like down to where he's just like emphasizing a different word and then like comparing them next to each other. And it's just like, you can get really into it if you want to.
Definitely.
Yeah. But all right, let's see. So Oh yeah, so going into it, because I feel like you'd have a unique perspective too, because you have the, theater and actor side of things too. Are there any things that you would say, as far as advice for the performing side of it? Tips for, I don't know, maybe that would go into also your public speaking background.
My best piece of advice, especially for both disciplines, especially public speaking, um, is a little bit of secondhand advice, actually. The great saxophonist Charlie Parker made this quote, and I learned it by my favorite African American studies professor, good old Dr. Judy Dozier at Lake Forest College, professor emeritus now. She's chilling.
Shout out.
Shout out. The quote is, "If you ain't lived it, it ain't coming out of your horn." And that speaks to authenticity. And so if you're writing us, and then I had to do this when public speaking, I used to be the president of Shanghai Imagine Toastmasters, right on. And so these are things that I would wind up telling people in their evaluations as well. If it's not your lived experience, why are you sharing it? We want to hear you, right? We want you to come alive. And when it comes to acting, sure, you can mine your life relatively quickly for something to tap into that certain emotion that scene calls for.
Mm-hmm.
There's something that made you devastated. There was some death that really hurt you. Go dig into it before you go deliver that speech. And I swear you'll set the stage on fire. It's the same thing to be said about telling jokes. If you're writing from your perspective, from things that happen in your life, you can stand in that power a little bit more. That's something that's true to you. You can tell that story. And folks, crowds can tell when you faking the funk.
Mm-hmm.
Crowds can tell when you faking the funk, whether you're, and everything crowds can tell when you faking the funk, especially with comedy. They can sniff a bullshit a mile away. So just bring that raw and that real and not that authentic, and bring something that's true to you, and you'll be fine.
I feel like that kind of fits. I feel like that kind of fits in with what you're saying about your writing process, like, going back through your old haunts and just like having memories triggered and like, just connecting all these things. I think new comedians kind of, when they write, they tend to go for things like dating or childhood, or just things that they think are universal experiences. But I think the way you're kind of doing it, it sounds like it's getting to those universal experiences in a more authentic way, if that makes sense. Like, I always think of the best comedians who are the ones that are telling you about something completely unique, and then by the end of their set you realize, oh, they're talking about dating. There's just like they're talking about something I can relate to. It's just they're talking about it from their point of view. And I think like that's kind of a mark of a person who's really worked out their set and worked on their writing process.
I think some comics today are too afraid to fail, that they don't want to seem vulnerable. And that could be one of the keys to even getting an audience on their side. If you have a certain quirk about you, especially something that's notable or plays a role in some of your life stories, you might want to set yourself up with that. That's your thing. That's, if you only date one type of person, if you there's a whole bunch of different things. You know what I'm saying?
Mine's that I'm a gay librarian. That is like that's my in.
That's it. I'm a childless MILF. That's part of my thing. It's true to me. And so if people would just go ahead and lean into those quirks, so that those are those superpowers. Whether you telling your life story in a memoir or doing a type 5, those are your superpowers, and you should be able to share them with the world.
Yeah,
Oh my God, thank you. Yeah, you're just like dropping so many good like golden nuggets of like things tonight. I just like teared up a little bit. What were you gonna say, Roz? Distract from me.
oh,
I have to get my shit together.
I don't remember now, but I'm sure it was great.
Either way, I want to leave space as we start winding down towards the end of this interview. But I'm curious, and we've touched on this a little bit because it's a more general question. But what are your goals in regards to comedy, especially long term, but also the reason I try and give people more time for this one is also if you have anything coming up that you want to plug, feel free to throw that in too.
Man, I love that. That's what do I want to see for myself long term. When I was growing up, Whoopi Goldberg was having a moment, and her one woman show had just come out, and she got rave reviews for that. She just got, you know, Color Purple. She was about to get Ghost, get that Oscar. Um, Whoopi was having a moment, and she's a huge influence for me when it comes to being a comedian, an actress, an entertainer, and just all around badass. So I would love to tick a lot of those boxes off. I mentioned Trent Reznor earlier. He's one away from an EGOT,
Yeah.
along with Whoopi. I,
That's
I
awesome.
like the idea of my name. Those beautiful, beautiful statuettes. So I can see that long term. Um, Maybe Netflix 2025.
Mhm.
Mhm. You heard it here first.
Netflix is definitely watching right now, so I'm glad you said that.
Maybe.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of stuff going on. I'm super excited. And what I have going on July so far is insane. On the 6th, I am at the Comedy Shrine here in a beautiful Aurora, Illinois, doing the 8 at 8, which we got a lineup of some heavy hitters. It's going to be a lot of fun for out here in the Chicago suburbs. The next day, Wednesday the 7th, I am up in Minnesota and Minneapolis, Bloomington, for the World Series of Comedy at the House of Comedy in the Mall of America. I'm in the wild card. I need full support. If you're at home, you can vote online too. You just need to go to WSOCtickets.com and you can find out all those details on how to get your live and virtual tickets. Please support. I have all of my cousins from both sides of the family in the Minneapolis, St. Paul area coming on down to the House of Comedy to see your girl. So you can do the same. You can stream in and check me out that night. Vote me on. It's a very stiff competition, and I'm trying to move up so that I can go through to the finals and hopefully get to that big main event in Las Vegas in September. And then after that, 7/14, I'm back in Chicago headlining at my buddies doing a Women Crush Wednesdays, which is fantastic. And on the 16th, that Friday in July, I'm going to be back to doing virtual with a really unique show called The Comments Section. You know how we turn up. So it's going to be fun. I'm so excited for that. More details and stuff, of course, on all my socials, especially at Erica Switzer on IG and YouTube, at the Erica Switzer on Twitter and TikTok. I always check out my TikTok because I do weird stuff on that. And of course, as always, on ericaswitzer.com.
Oh my God, you're so busy. And honestly, I see why. I don't think it is far-fetched at all. I will be there rooting for you when they're giving you the last of the EGOT 4 team of statuettes. I also just like love that. I feel like I feel like I'd never dream big anymore. I'm gonna work on that. I'm gonna set my goals higher. Then do another live mic again someday. Is where I'm at currently. But thank you so much for talking with us. Any other parting words that you'd like to share?
Rosalind.
Yeah.
Everybody out there, dream big. For real. Dream big. and just let it take you where you're supposed to go. Go dream big and go do the thing. That's it.
Awesome,
All right.
awesome. I'm going to go ahead and awkwardly spotlight myself now as I do our little outro. Here we go. All right. Wow. Thank you so much, Erica, for hanging out with us tonight. Thank you, Roz, for being an awesome co-host, as always. And of course, thank you, our lovely audience, for watching. If you enjoyed the stream, please consider making a donation of any size to us at districtcomedy.io. Again, you can check out Erica's stuff at her website, ericaswitzer.com. And be sure to tune in next week. We are interviewing comedian Brian Preston, which is sure to be fun. I'm really excited. But yeah, I love ending the night with all these good feels. Have a good week, everybody, and see you next time. Bye!